Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Station Sentinel. His hands rested calmly on the metal railing as he watched the large holographic display in front of him. The image showed creatures that looked nothing like humans. They were tall, with bodies covered in dark shells that reflected the blue light of the projection. Their heads had multiple eyes and mandibles that clicked together when they spoke. The leader of these creatures was Ambassador Krell Zoth. He was bigger than the others, with marks on his shell that showed his high rank. When he spoke, his voice came through the translator as deep and threatening. The bridge of the Sentinel was silent as everyone listened to his words. "Humans of Earth," Krell Zoth began, his mandibles clicking between words. "The Vraxian Empire has watched you for 3,000 years. We gave you peace. We gave you time to understand your place in this galaxy, but you have broken the Treaty of Soul. You have sent ships beyond the boundaries we set for you. You have gathered weapons that threaten the peace of all civilized species." Captain Lisa Hammond stood beside Morrison. She was younger than the Admiral, with short brown hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She glanced at Morrison's face, expecting to see worry or fear. Instead, she saw something else. The corner of his mouth was turned up slightly. He looked almost pleased. Krell Zoth continued his speech. "The Vraxian High Council, together with our allies across 12 systems, have decided that humanity must be contained once more. We demand the immediate surrender of all human military vessels. We demand that you abandon your colonies beyond the Mars orbit. We demand that you submit to our authority. You have 24 hours to comply. If you refuse, we will take what we demand by force." The other aliens behind Krell Zoth made sounds of agreement. Some clicked their mandibles. Others, who looked like tall reptiles with scaled skin, hissed softly. There were even a few that looked like floating jellyfish with glowing tentacles. They all seemed confident. They all seemed certain that humans would be afraid. Morrison took a step forward. His gray uniform was neat and perfect, with medals across his chest that showed his many years of service. His hair was silver at the temples, and his face had lines that came from decades of responsibility. But his eyes were bright and alert. When he spoke, his voice was calm and steady. "Ambassador Krell Zoth," Morrison said, "thank you for your message. I have one response for you and your council." The aliens waited. Behind Morrison, the entire bridge crew watched. Lieutenant Chris Baker sat at the communications station, his fingers ready on the controls. Commander Ben Carter stood at the weapons console, his face showing the same strange calm that Morrison displayed. Everyone seemed to be waiting for something. Morrison smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. "We've been waiting," Morrison said simply. Krell Zoth's mandibles stopped moving. His multiple eyes blinked in confusion. "Waiting? You have been waiting for war? This is madness. You cannot hope to stand against the combined might of the Vraxian Empire and our allies. We have 5,000 warships. We have weapons that can destroy planets. We have soldiers who have conquered 100 worlds. What do you have?" Morrison's smile grew wider. 24 hours, you said? We'll need less than that. Bridge crew, initiate protocol homecoming." The bridge suddenly came alive with activity. Every station began running commands. Lights flickered as massive amounts of data flowed through the systems. Lisa Hammond moved to her console and entered a long sequence of codes. Across the bridge, others did the same. "Protocol homecoming confirmed," Lisa said. "Sending activation codes to all stations now?" Krell Zoth watched this with growing confusion. "What is protocol homecoming?" "What are you doing?" Morrison turned back to the hologram. "You'll see soon enough. In the meantime, Ambassador, I suggest you and your fleet maintain your current position at the edge of our solar system. Things are about to get very interesting." The transmission ended. The aliens disappeared from the holographic display, leaving the bridge in normal lighting. For a moment, there was silence. Then Chris Baker let out a long breath. "I can't believe it's finally happening," he said. "Believe it," Morrison replied. He turned to face his crew. Everyone performed well. Now comes the real work. "Lisa, status report on the defensive grid?" Lisa checked her console. "Neptune platforms are powering up now. Jupiter stations report ready status. Mars defenses are at full capacity. The lunar batteries are online and targeting solutions are being calculated." "Good, what about the fleet?" "Captain Matt Johnson reports that his ships are moving into position near Jupiter. Commander Kate Morrison's fighter wing is launching from the dark side of the moon as we speak. All vessels report ready for combat operations." Morrison nodded. He had not seen his daughter Kate in person for 6 months. She had been training with the new fighter wings, learning to pilot the advanced craft that represented humanity's latest achievements. He was proud of her, though he rarely had time to tell her so. "Sir," Ben Carter said from the weapons station, "we're receiving reports from Earth. The President is about to address the world." "Put it on screen," Morrison ordered. The main display changed to show President Kate Sullivan sitting at a desk in the White House. She wore a dark blue suit and her expression was serious but calm. Behind her, the flags of Earth's United Nations stood in a row. The camera was close enough to see her face clearly. "People of Earth," she began. "By now many of you have heard the news. The Vraxian Empire has declared war on humanity. They believe we are unprepared. They believe we are weak. They believe that 3,000 years of peace has made us soft and easy to defeat." She paused, and like Morrison, she smiled. "They are wrong. For 3,000 years we have been patient. We accepted the boundaries they set for us. We agreed to their treaties and their rules. But we did not waste that time. Every generation since the First War has worked toward this day. Every scientist, every engineer, every soldier has prepared for the moment when the Vraxians would return." On the bridge of the Sentinel, the crew watched silently. Morrison had heard this speech during its rehearsal, but hearing it now, with war actually beginning, made it feel different, more real, more important. "Today," President Sullivan continued, "we show them who we really are. We show them what humanity has become. 3,000 years ago, we were a young species, barely united, fighting among ourselves. The Vraxians defeated us easily and forced us to accept their peace. But they made one critical mistake. They gave us time. Time to learn. Time to grow. Time to prepare." She stood up from the desk and walked closer to the camera. "I will not lie to you. War is never easy. People will fight. People will sacrifice. But we will win. We will win because we are not the same species the Vraxians defeated long ago. We are stronger. We are smarter. We are ready. And most importantly, we are united as one people, one world, one voice." The president's expression became firm. "To the Vraxian Empire and all who stand with them, I have this message. You wanted to see what humanity would become with 3,000 years of preparation? Look around. We are everywhere. We are ready, and we are not afraid." The transmission ended. The bridge crew remained quiet for a moment, processing what they had just heard. Then Morrison spoke. "All stations, report status." One by one, the officers gave their reports. Every system was functioning perfectly. Every weapon was ready. Every ship was in position. Everything that humanity had built in secret over 3,000 years was now activated and ready for war. Morrison walked to the large window that looked out into space. From here, he could see Earth in the distance, a blue and white sphere that looked peaceful and beautiful. Around it, invisible to the eye but present on his sensors, were thousands of defensive platforms. Hidden among the asteroids were ships. Buried under the surface of the moon were weapons. Throughout the solar system, humanity had created a defense network that the aliens knew nothing about. "They think they know us," Morrison said softly. Lisa came to stand beside him. "Sir," she asked, "the Vraxians, they think they know what we are. They studied us 3,000 years ago and they think we haven't changed. But they only saw us at our weakest. They never saw what we could become." Lisa nodded. "The reports from the intelligence division say the Vraxians have barely advanced in 3,000 years. Their technology is almost the same. Their tactics are the same. They've been the dominant power for so long that they stopped innovating. And we," Morrison said, "spent every single day of those 3,000 years getting better. Every day we learned something new. Every day we improved something. We didn't waste a single moment. When do you think they'll attack?" Lisa asked. Morrison checked the time display on his console. "Soon. They're probably gathering their fleet right now, preparing for a massive assault they think will overwhelm us. They'll come in force trying to end this quickly. And when they do," Morrison's smile returned, "when they do, Captain Hammond, they're going to learn a very important lesson. They're going to learn that humanity doesn't just survive. We don't just endure. When you push us, we push back harder. When you threaten us, we become dangerous. And when you give us 3,000 years to prepare..." He paused, looking. Commander Ben Carter stepped off the transport shuttle and looked around at the massive hangar. The ceiling stretched up so high that he could barely see it in the dim lighting. Ships of various sizes sat in neat rows, their hulls dark and silent. but there was something about them that felt wrong. They didn't look like normal Earth ships. Their shapes were strange, with curves and angles that seemed both familiar and alien at the same time. "Welcome to Facility Darkside," a woman's voice said from behind him. Ben turned to see Dr. Amy Rodriguez walking toward him. She was a small woman with black hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her white lab coat had various badges and clearance marks on it. Despite her small size, she moved with confidence and authority. Behind Ben, a group of about 20 people filed off the shuttle. They were journalists, civilian observers, and government officials who had been cleared to see what humanity had been hiding for 3,000 years. "Dr. Rodriguez," Ben said, shaking her hand. "Thank you for having us. Though I have to admit I'm not sure what we're doing here. The war just started." "Shouldn't we be focused on the battle?" Amy smiled. "Commander, you're here because the world needs to know what we've been doing." President Sullivan decided that now that the war has begun, there's no reason to keep our secrets anymore. In fact, she wants everyone to know. She wants the Vraxians to know. "Come with me." She led the group out of the hangar and into a wide corridor. The walls were smooth metal, and lights ran along the ceiling in lines that stretched into the distance. As they walked, Ben noticed doors on both sides. Each door had a number and a clearance level marked on it. Most of them showed clearance levels he had never even heard of. "How big is this place?" asked one of the journalists, a young man with a camera on his shoulder. "Facility Darkside extends 14 kilometers into the moon's surface," Amy explained. "It's the largest installation humanity has ever built, and until today, officially, it didn't exist." They entered an elevator that took them down. Ben watched the level indicator as they descended. It kept going down past level 20, past level 50, past level 100. When it finally stopped, the indicator showed level 147. The doors opened to reveal something Ben had never expected. Instead of narrow corridors and small rooms, they stepped out onto a platform overlooking a massive open space. It was like a city built inside the moon. Buildings rose up from the floor far below. Lights twinkled everywhere like stars. And people, thousands of people, moved through the streets and between the buildings. "This is impossible," someone whispered. "No," Amy said. "It's just very, very secret. We've been building this for 2,000 years. Every generation added to it, expanded it, improved it. This is just one of 7 major facilities hidden throughout the solar system. There are smaller bases too, more than 50 of them, scattered on moons and asteroids where the Vraxians never thought to look." She led them along the platform to a train station. They boarded a small train that moved silently through the massive space. As they traveled, Amy pointed out various sections. "That section there is medical research. We've made advances in healing and life extension that won't be public knowledge for another 50 years. The building next to it is cybernetics. We've learned how to connect human nervous systems directly to computer systems. The implications are remarkable." "And military applications?" Ben asked. Amy nodded. "Everything here has military applications, Commander. That's why it exists. But it also has peaceful uses. We've always believed that the technology we develop for war should also help humanity in peace. It's one of our core principles." The train stopped at a platform near a particularly large building. They got off and entered through massive doors. Inside was a training facility unlike anything Ben had ever seen. The ceiling was at least 100 meters high. The floor was divided into different sections, each one showing a different environment. One section looked like a frozen wasteland. Another looked like a burning desert. A third was filled with water. In each section, soldiers were training. But these weren't normal soldiers. They moved too fast, jumped too high. Their reactions were impossibly quick. In the frozen section, Ben watched a soldier leap at least 10 meters into the air and land without making a sound in the snow. "Enhanced soldiers," Amy explained. "We've been developing the enhancement process for 1,500 years. It's a combination of genetic modification, cybernetic implants, and specialized training that takes 10 years to complete. Each one of these soldiers is worth 100 normal fighters." A journalist raised her hand. "Is it safe?" "The enhancement process?" "Now it is," Amy replied. "It wasn't always. In the early days, we lost a lot of volunteers. But they knew the risks. They did it anyway because they believed in the mission, because they believed that one day the Vraxians would come back, and humanity needed to be ready." They watched the training for a while longer. Then Amy led them to another section of the facility. This one was filled with factories. Robots and humans worked side by side, building things that Ben couldn't quite identify. The pieces looked like parts of ships, but they were too advanced, too strange. "This is where we build our fleet," Amy said. "Every ship you saw in that hangar when you arrived was built here or in one of the other facilities. We have approximately 8,000 combat vessels hidden throughout the solar system, another 12,000 support ships, and production continues every day." 8,000 ships? Ben said in shock. "How did you hide that many ships?" "Carefully," Amy replied with a slight smile. "We built them in pieces, kept them powered down, disguised them as asteroids or debris. The Vraxians have been watching us, yes, but they were looking for certain things: large energy signatures, communication patterns, obvious military buildups. We gave them none of those things. Instead, we built slowly, quietly, patiently." A government official, an older woman with gray hair, spoke up. "The cost of all this must be incredible. How did we pay for it?" "Every nation on Earth has been contributing," Amy answered. "Small amounts from each, so nothing looks suspicious. We also developed new technologies and sold them carefully, made money from patents and innovations, and we've been very efficient. When you have 3,000 years to plan, you can avoid a lot of waste." They continued through the facility. Each new section revealed more secrets. There was a research lab where scientists had developed new materials that were stronger than anything previously known. There was a computer center where artificial intelligence programs ran simulations of every possible battle scenario. There was even a biological research center where they had studied samples from every known alien species, looking for weaknesses that could be exploited. Finally, Amy brought them to a section marked with red warning signs. Security guards stood at the entrance, checking everyone's identification carefully before allowing them through. Beyond the security checkpoint was a long hallway with thick metal doors on each side. Each door had a window, and inside each window Ben could see a chamber filled with a glowing blue liquid. "This is the Genesis Hall," Amy said quietly. Her tone had changed. She sounded more serious now, more respectful. "This is where we keep our greatest treasure, and our greatest shame." She walked to the first door and looked through the window. Ben and the others gathered around to look. Inside the glowing liquid, they could see a figure floating. It was a man, completely still, eyes closed. He looked young, maybe 30 years old, but something about him felt ancient. "His name is Colonel Danny Wright," Amy said. "He fought in the First Contact War 3,000 years ago. He was at the Battle of Mars where humanity made its last stand. He was one of the few who survived. When the truce was signed, he and 200 other veterans volunteered for something that had never been tried before. They let us put them in stasis, deep freeze, suspended animation, whatever you want to call it." "Why?" someone asked. "Because they were afraid we would forget," Amy replied. "They were afraid that after a few generations, humans would forget what the war was really like. They would forget the tactics, the lessons learned in blood, the mistakes that cost lives. So these veterans volunteered to sleep, to wait, to preserve that knowledge for the day when it would be needed again." She moved to the next door. "Lieutenant Steve Palmer, age at time of stasis 28. He was a pilot. Shot down 16 Vraxian fighters before his ship was destroyed. He bailed out and fought on foot for 3 days before being rescued." Door after door, Amy introduced them to the sleeping veterans. Each one had a story. Each one had fought and bled and survived the First War. And each one had given up their chance at a normal life to wait for this day. "We wake them up every 50 years, Amy explained. "Let them spend a year training the new generation, teaching them what they know. Then they go back to sleep. Some of them have been awake 6 times, some only twice, but every single one of them has contributed to making humanity's military what it is today." "And now?" Ben asked. "Now that the war has started?" Amy pressed a button on a control panel near the wall. Throughout the Genesis Hall, the chambers began to drain. The blue liquid flowed out, and the figures inside began to move. Eyes opened. Hands flexed. After. War Master Thek's Corps stood in the command center of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. The ship was massive, almost 3 kilometers long, and carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Around his ship, spread across the dark space beyond Neptune's orbit, were 5,000 other Vraxian warships. It was the largest battle fleet the Empire had assembled in over 1,000 years. Thek's Corps was confident. His shell was dark red, a color that showed his many victories in battle. His mandibles clicked together as he reviewed the tactical display. The humans were contained in their solar system with their primitive ships and outdated weapons. This would not be a battle. It would be an execution. "All ships report ready, War Master," his second-in-command said. The officer was younger, with a lighter-colored shell. "We await your command to advance. Begin the assault," Thexacor ordered. "Full speed to Earth, destroy any resistance. Show these humans the price of defiance." The Vraxian fleet began to move. Thousands of ships accelerated toward the inner solar system, their engines burning bright against the darkness of space. They moved in perfect formation, a display of military precision that had conquered dozens of worlds. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Lieutenant Chris Baker sat at the sensor station. Chris was human, a prisoner taken during a border skirmish 3 years ago. The Vraxians had put him to work on their ships, believing that a human operator might be useful for understanding human responses. They didn't know that Chris had volunteered for that mission specifically to be captured. He was a spy, and for 3 years he had been waiting for this moment. His fingers moved carefully across the console, entering commands that looked like normal sensor operations. But hidden within those commands were signals being sent on frequencies the Vraxians didn't monitor. He was telling the Human Defense Network exactly where every Vraxian ship was located. The fleet crossed Neptune's orbit. Thexacor watched the display with satisfaction. No resistance yet. The humans were probably hiding near their home planet, preparing for a desperate last stand. Then the sensors started screaming warnings. "Energy spikes detected," an officer shouted. "Multiple sources. They're everywhere." Space itself seemed to come alive around the Vraxian fleet. What had appeared to be empty space suddenly filled with thousands of objects. They materialized out of nowhere as if they had been invisible. They were platforms, each one about 50 meters across, covered in weapons. "Defensive platforms," Thexacor roared. "How did they get there?" "We scanned this area." But there was no time for answers. The platforms opened fire. The weapons they used were unlike anything in Vraxian experience. Instead of energy beams or kinetic rounds, they fired something that looked like pure white light. When that light touched a Vraxian ship's shields, the shields didn't just fail. They shattered, breaking apart into pieces of energy that scattered into space. "Shields are ineffective," someone yelled. "The weapons are passing through as if the shields aren't there." Thexacor's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of stress. "All ships, evasive maneuvers. Return fire." The Vraxian fleet tried to respond, but the platforms were moving. They didn't fly like normal ships. They teleported, jumping from one position to another in an instant. A platform would appear, fire its weapons, and vanish before the Vraxians could target it. Then it would appear somewhere else and fire again. In the first 5 minutes of combat, the Vraxians lost 300 ships. "How are they doing this?" Thexacor demanded. "This technology should not exist." Chris Baker smiled quietly at his sensor station. The platforms weren't teleporting. They were using quantum displacement drives, a technology humanity had developed 800 years ago. The drives created a copy of the platform in a new location, while the original ceased to exist. To an observer, it looked like instant transportation. And the weapons were designed specifically to exploit a weakness in Vraxian shield technology, a weakness that humanity had discovered through careful study of captured equipment. But the real surprise was still coming. Captain Matt Johnson watched the battle from his position near Jupiter. His ship, the Freedom's Dawn, had been disguised as a large asteroid for the past 5 years. Now, as the Vraxian fleet struggled with the defensive platforms, he received the signal he had been waiting for. "All ships," he said calmly into his communication system, "execute attack pattern Delta 7. Show them what we've been hiding." Around Jupiter, 50 objects that had looked like asteroids and mining stations suddenly came to life. Their outer layers fell away, revealing sleek warships underneath. These were not the bulky industrial ships the Vraxians remembered from 3,000 years ago. These were predators built for speed and violence. The Freedom's Dawn and her sister ships accelerated at speeds that should have been impossible. Within seconds, they were moving at significant fractions of light speed. They fell upon the rear of the Vraxian formation like wolves attacking a herd. Thexacor saw them coming on his display, but he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "They're moving too fast." "Check the sensors." "Sensors are correct, War Master." An officer replied, his voice shaking. "They're using some kind of gravitational drive. They're literally falling through space-time toward us." Matt Johnson's ship fired its main weapon. It was a railgun, but not like any railgun the Vraxians had seen before. It used magnetic fields so powerful that they could accelerate a projectile to 99% of light speed. When the projectile hit a Vraxian cruiser, it passed completely through the ship and out the other side, leaving a hole 10 meters wide. The cruiser exploded, and Matt was already targeting the next ship. Around him, his fleet was doing the same. The Vraxian rearguard disintegrated under the assault. Ships exploded. Others tried to turn and face their attackers, but the human ships were too fast. They would fire, accelerate away, circle around, and fire again. The Vraxians couldn't keep up. "Reform the line," Thexcor ordered. "All ships face the rear attackers." "We need to—" He never finished the order, because at that moment something new appeared on his sensors, something that made his blood run cold. They were small craft, hundreds of them streaming out from the dark side of Earth's moon. But they were moving even faster than the larger ships, and they were flying in patterns that seemed almost alive, flowing and weaving through space like schools of fish. Commander Kate Morrison sat in the cockpit of her fighter, but calling it a cockpit wasn't quite accurate. The fighter wasn't really separate from her anymore. When she had graduated from the Neural Integration Program, she had become part of the ship. Her thoughts controlled it. Her reflexes were its reflexes. When she wanted to move, the ship moved. There was no delay, no translation between thought and action. "Fighter Wing Alpha," she said, though she was really thinking the words and the ship was transmitting them. "Engage at will. Show them what we can do." Her fighter accelerated. She didn't have to touch any controls. She just thought about moving, and the ship responded. The acceleration would have killed a normal human, but Kate's body had been enhanced, strengthened, modified to survive forces that would tear apart an unmodified person. She flew straight at a Vraxian destroyer. The ship fired at her with dozens of defensive weapons. Energy beams, missiles, rapid-fire cannons, all of them trying to hit her small fighter. But Kate was already moving, already reacting. Her enhanced reflexes, combined with the ship's instant response to her thoughts, made her effectively impossible to hit. She passed within 100 meters of the destroyer and fired her weapon. It was a focused particle beam, small but incredibly powerful. The beam cut through the destroyer's armor like it was paper. She didn't stop to watch it explode. She was already moving to the next target. Behind her, the other fighters in her wing were doing the same. They moved like a swarm, each one independent but somehow coordinated. When one fighter attacked a ship, others would follow, hitting it from different angles. When Vraxian fighters tried to intercept them, the human fighters would scatter, regroup, and counterattack before the aliens could react. Thexcor watched his fleet being torn apart. Ships that had been invincible for centuries were dying in minutes. His crews, trained in dozens of battles, couldn't track targets that moved faster than their weapons could traverse. His commanders, skilled in traditional warfare, had no response to enemies that fought in 3 dimensions with perfect coordination. "Withdraw," he finally ordered. The word tasted like poison in his mouth. "All ships retreat back past Neptune's orbit. We need to regroup." But withdrawing from this battle was harder than entering it. The human fighters harassed them the whole way, darting in to fire and then vanishing before return fire could be launched. The defensive platforms continued their attack, teleporting in and out of existence, and the human warships pursued them, maintaining a steady rate of fire that destroyed any Vraxian vessel that fell out of formation. By the time the survivors of the Vraxian fleet crossed back beyond Neptune's orbit, they had lost 1,700 ships. More than a third of the mighty fleet that had entered the solar system with such confidence was gone. Thexcor stood in the ruins of his command center. Several consoles had exploded during the battle. The bodies of his crew members lay on the... Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the briefing room of the Earth Defense Station Sentinel. Around him were the senior commanders of Earth's military forces. Captain Lisa Hammond sat to his right. Colonel Danny Wright, now awake and active after 3,000 years of sleep, stood at the front of the room reviewing tactical displays. "The Vraxians are regrouping beyond Neptune," Danny said, pointing to the display. "Our intelligence shows they're arguing among themselves. Some want to retreat entirely. Others want to call for reinforcements and try again. But they're all scared." "That's good. Fear makes people make mistakes. What's our next move?" asked Commander Ben Carter. He had returned from the moon base and was now serving as Morrison's strategic advisor. Morrison stood up. We don't give them time to recover. In the old days, after winning a defensive battle, an army would rest and celebrate. But we're not following old rules. We're going to do something they won't expect. We're going to attack. The room fell silent. Finally, Lisa spoke. Attack? Sir, they still have over 3,000 ships. Even with our advantages, that's a significant force. Not attack their fleet, Morrison clarified. We're going to attack their home. Captain Hammond, you will take 200 of our best ships directly to Vraxis Prime. You will arrive in their home system and you will wait. You will not fire unless fired upon. But your presence there will send a message. What message? Lisa asked. That we can reach them anywhere. Morrison replied. That their home is not safe. That if they want war, we can bring that war to their doorstep just as easily as they brought it to ours. Danny Wright nodded with approval. Psychological warfare, I like it. The Vraxians have been the dominant power for so long that they've forgotten what it's like to be vulnerable. Seeing our ships in orbit around their homeworld will shake them to their core. Won't they defend their home? Ben asked. They must have defenses there. I'm sure they do, Morrison agreed. But our ships are faster than theirs. If Captain Hammond's fleet moves at full speed, they can be at Vraxis Prime in 3 weeks. It would take the Vraxian fleet at least 2 months to get back home using their drives. By the time any defense force arrives, our fleet will be long gone. Lisa studied the star charts. It's risky. We'd be deep in enemy territory, surrounded by their systems. That's the point, Morrison said. We need to show them that distance doesn't protect them anymore. Technology has changed. Humanity has changed. The old rules don't apply. The briefing continued for another hour, working out details and contingencies. When it was over, Lisa returned to her quarters to prepare. She would be leaving in 12 hours, leading the deepest strike into enemy territory that humanity had ever attempted. As she packed her belongings, there was a knock on her door. It was Danny Wright. Captain Hammond, he said. May I come in? Of course, Colonel. Danny entered and looked around the small room. You know, 3,000 years ago, ship quarters were even smaller than this. We thought we were cramped then. But I suppose humans adapt to anything given enough time. Did you need something, sir? Lisa asked. I wanted to talk to you about your mission, Danny said. I fought in the First War. I saw how the Vraxians think, how they operate, and I want you to understand something important. They see war as a tool of politics, a way to enforce their will. They don't understand war the way humans do. What do you mean? Danny sat down in the small chair by the desk. For them, war is controlled, measured. They fight until one side surrenders, then they negotiate terms. They don't understand the concept of total war, of fighting until there's nothing left to fight with. That's a human concept, and that's what you need to show them. Lisa listened carefully. You're saying we need to be more aggressive? I'm saying you need to show them that humanity doesn't fight wars to win political points. We fight wars to survive, and when our survival is threatened, we are willing to do whatever it takes. They need to see that. They need to understand that declaring war on humanity wasn't a political move. It was an existential mistake. Danny stood up. Your mission is about more than just flying to their homeworld. It's about showing them that they have awakened something they should have left sleeping. Be careful, Captain, but be bold. Show them what humanity has become. 12 hours later, Lisa stood on the bridge of the EDS Valiant, her flagship for this mission. Around her in space were 199 other ships, all of them sleek and deadly. They were the newest vessels in the human fleet, equipped with the gravitational drives that allowed for faster-than-light travel. All ships report ready, her communications officer said. Then let's go make history, Lisa replied. Engage drives. Destination Vraxis Prime. The ships vanished from normal space, folding reality around themselves as they traveled faster than light toward the enemy homeworld. While Lisa's fleet traveled through space, other operations were happening throughout the galaxy. On the colony world of Kepler 442b, humanity's outermost settlement, Private Jake Henderson checked his armor one more time. The suit was massive, standing 3 meters tall when he was inside it. It was made of materials that could withstand direct hits from most known weapons. It had integrated weapon systems, life support, and a neural interface that connected directly to his enhanced nervous system. Squad check, said Sergeant Helen Brooks over the communication link. She was the leader of Jake's unit, a veteran of 15 years who had volunteered for the enhancement program. One by one, the squad members reported in. There were 20 of them in this unit, all equipped with the powered armor. They had been stationed on Kepler 442b for 6 months, posing as civilian security, but their real purpose was to be ready for what was about to happen. Intelligence reports confirmed, Helen said. The Sauroch Empire is sending a fleet to attack the colony. They think we're vulnerable out here. They think they can score an easy victory while the main human forces are busy with the Vraxians. They're wrong. Jake felt his heart beating faster. This would be his first real combat. He had trained for years, spent countless hours in simulations, gone through the painful process of physical enhancement, but training and reality were different things. I know some of you are nervous, Helen continued. That's normal. That's human. But remember your training. Remember why we're here. These colonists are counting on us. Earth is counting on us. And most importantly, humanity's future is counting on us. We're not just fighting for this colony. We're fighting to show every species in the galaxy that humanity protects its own. The Sauroch fleet arrived 3 hours later. They were reptilian creatures, tall and muscular, with scales that ranged from green to dark brown. They were known throughout the galaxy as fierce warriors who enjoyed combat. They had brought 10,000 soldiers to overwhelm what they thought was a small, poorly defended human colony. The Sauroch ships landed on the outskirts of the main settlement. Their soldiers poured out, roaring battle cries and brandishing weapons. They expected panicked civilians running in fear. Instead, they found Jake Henderson and his unit waiting for them. The Sauroch commander saw the armored humans and laughed. 20 soldiers, 20? We have brought 10,000. Surrender now and we will kill you quickly. Jake's voice came through his armor's external speakers. We don't surrender, and you're going to need more soldiers. The battle began. The Sauroch charged forward, firing weapons and swinging bladed weapons. Their shots hit the powered armor and bounced off harmlessly. Their blades struck the armor and broke. And then the humans started shooting back. Jake's armor had integrated weapons. His right arm ended in a plasma cannon. His left arm had a rapid-fire kinetic weapon. His shoulders had missile pods. He was essentially a walking tank. And he had 19 others just like him backing him up. The Sauroch warriors fell by the dozens. They tried to surround the humans, but the armor gave enhanced strength and speed. Jake moved faster than any unarmored human could, dodging attacks and returning fire with deadly accuracy. When a Sauroch warrior managed to get close, Jake simply grabbed him and threw him 30 meters into a group of his companions. Helen Brooks was destroying Sauroch soldiers with ruthless efficiency. Her armor was equipped with a flamethrower, and she used it to create walls of fire that channeled the enemy into kill zones. Other members of the squad worked in pairs, covering each other and systematically eliminating any threat. The battle lasted for 6 hours. By the end, the Sauroch had lost 7,000 soldiers. The survivors fled back to their ships and left the system, broadcasting warnings about the human death machines that couldn't be stopped. Jake's unit had suffered no casualties. A few armor systems needed repair. Some weapons needed reloading, but every single human soldier walked away from that battle alive. As Jake removed his helmet and breathed the colony's air, he saw the colonists coming out to thank them. There were children among them, families who had been hiding in shelters during the battle. They looked at the armored soldiers with awe and gratitude. A little girl, maybe 7 years old, walked up to Jake. She looked up at his massive armored form. "Are you a robot?" she asked. Jake knelt down, bringing his helmet to her level. "No, I'm human. Just like you. I'm just wearing a special suit to keep people safe." "Thank you for protecting us," the girl said. The conference hall on the neutral station of Unity Point was filled with representatives from 47 different species. The station itself was ancient, built thousands of years ago as a place where different civilizations could meet without fear. It orbited a star that belonged to no one, in a region of space that was considered neutral ground by all major powers. President Kate Sullivan walked into the hall, accompanied by Admiral Jake Morrison and Ambassador Helen Rodriguez, Dr. Amy Rodriguez's sister who specialized in diplomatic relations. The three humans moved confidently through the crowd of aliens. Tall Vraxians with their insect-like features, reptilian Sauroch warriors who stood in the corner, still bitter about their defeat, floating jellyfish-like Quilori with their glowing tentacles, and dozens of other species, each one different from the last. Ambassador Krelzoth watched the humans enter. His mandibles clicked nervously. 3 months had passed since the start of the war. 3 months since the Vraxian fleet had been defeated. 3 months since human ships had appeared in orbit around his homeworld. In that time, everything had changed. The meeting was called to order by Elder Morth, a Quilori who was known for being fair and wise. His voice was translated through the station's system so everyone could understand. "We gather here today to discuss a new treaty," Elder Morth said, his tentacles glowing with different colors as he spoke. "The old treaty, the Treaty of Sol, has been broken. The war that followed has shown us all that the galaxy has changed. We must now decide how to move forward." Krelzoth stepped forward to speak. It took effort for him to do so. In his culture, the defeated did not speak first. But he had been instructed by the Vraxian High Council to be humble, to accept reality, to try to salvage what could be salvaged. 3,000 years ago, Krelzoth began, the Vraxian Empire defeated humanity in war. We imposed a treaty that limited their expansion and controlled their development. We believed this was necessary for the peace of the galaxy. We believed humans were dangerous and needed to be contained. He paused, his multiple eyes looking at President Sullivan. "We were wrong. Not about humans being dangerous. We were right about that. But we were wrong to think we could contain them. We gave them 3,000 years, and they used that time to become stronger than we ever imagined possible. They became more dangerous than we feared. But they also became something else. They became honorable." There were murmurs throughout the hall. Some aliens were surprised to hear a Vraxian admit fault. Others nodded in agreement. "Humanity defeated our fleet," Krelzoth continued. "They could have destroyed our homeworld. They had the power to do so. Their ships were in orbit. Their weapons were ready. But they chose not to attack. They chose to wait, to talk, to give us a chance to surrender with dignity. That is not the action of a savage species. That is the action of a civilized one." President Sullivan stood up to speak. She was a tall woman with gray hair, wearing a simple blue suit that represented Earth. She looked calm, but her eyes were sharp and focused. "Thank you, Ambassador Krelzoth," she said. "Your words show wisdom. Yes, we could have destroyed Vraxis Prime, but that was never our goal. Humanity does not want to conquer the galaxy. We don't want to dominate other species. We simply want what every civilization wants. We want freedom. We want respect. We want to be treated as equals." She activated a holographic display that showed the old Treaty of Sol. This treaty was imposed on us after our defeat. It limited us to our solar system. It controlled our technology. It restricted our population growth. For 3,000 years we lived under these rules, and we obeyed them, not because we agreed with them, but because we were not strong enough to challenge them. The display changed to show a new document. "This is what we propose. A new treaty. One based on equality, not domination. One that recognizes humanity as a sovereign power with the right to expand, develop, and defend ourselves as we see fit." A Sorok commander hissed loudly. "You speak of equality, but you demonstrated superiority. Your soldiers defeated 7,000 of our warriors with only 20 troops. Your ships move faster than ours. Your weapons pierce our defenses. You are not our equals. You are our superiors. And you want us to simply accept this?" Jake Henderson stood up from where he sat in the human delegation. He was now a lieutenant, promoted after the battle on Kepler 442b. He still bore some scars from that fight, marks that even enhanced healing couldn't fully remove. "Commander," Jake said to the Sorok, "you're right that we demonstrated superior military capability, but that doesn't mean we want to rule over you. My squad protected a human colony. We did what any species would do. We defended our people. Your warriors came to attack civilians. We stopped you. That's not domination. That's defense." The Sorok commander growled but didn't respond. Jake continued. "Every species here has strengths. The Vraxians have incredible organizational ability. The Sorok are fierce warriors. The Quilori have wisdom that comes from living for centuries. Humans have our own strengths. We adapt, we innovate. We never give up. But none of that means we want to control you. We just want to be free to be ourselves." Admiral Morrison stood next. "Let me be clear about something. Humanity developed our military capability because we were afraid. We remembered the First War. We remembered being defeated. We remembered being forced to accept terms we didn't want, so we spent 3,000 years making sure it would never happen again. Every weapon we built, every ship we designed, every soldier we trained was for defense, to make sure no one could ever threaten Earth again. He looked around the hall, making eye contact with representatives from different species. But now that we've proven we can defend ourselves, we don't need to be aggressive. We can afford to be peaceful. We can afford to negotiate. We can afford to be generous in victory. That's the position of strength we wanted, not to attack others, but to ensure no one can attack us. Dr. Amy Rodriguez stepped forward. She had been invited to the conference because of her role in developing humanity's technology. She carried a datapad with information about human scientific advances. I want to address something, Amy said. Many of you are afraid of human technology. You're afraid we'll use it to dominate you. I understand that fear, but I want to propose something different. What if we shared our technology? Not all of it. Not the military applications, but the civilian applications. The medical advances, the energy systems, the food production methods. What if humanity's rise could benefit everyone? This caused a stir in the hall. Species began talking among themselves. The idea of humans sharing their technology was unexpected. Elder Morth glowed brighter, a sign of interest. You would share your knowledge, why? Because, Amy replied, humanity learned something important during our 3,000 years of isolation. We learned that progress happens faster when people work together. Every advance we made built on previous advances. Every generation taught the next generation. Cooperation is more efficient than conflict. So yes, we're willing to share, but in exchange, we want access to the knowledge of other species. We want to learn from you just as you can learn from us. President Sullivan nodded. That's the core of what we're proposing. A galactic community where each species contributes and each species benefits. Where humanity is not contained but welcomed, where our strength is used to protect, not threaten, where our innovation is shared, not hoarded. She pulled up the new treaty document again. The terms are simple. Humanity has full freedom to expand into any unclaimed system. We will respect the territories of other species and expect them to respect ours. We will establish trade relationships. We will share scientific knowledge. We will contribute to mutual defense. And most importantly, we will be recognized as equals at this council and all future galactic meetings. Krelzoth looked at the treaty terms. They were fair. More than fair. They were generous considering how decisively humanity had won the war. He felt his mandibles click slowly, a sign of acceptance. The Vraxian Empire will agree to these terms, he said. We have no choice but also no objection. Humanity has proven their right to be here. We acknowledge this. One by one, other species also agreed. Some did so eagerly, seeing opportunity in alliance with humanity. Others did so reluctantly, accepting reality. But within 2 hours, 45 of the 47 species present had signed the new treaty. Only the Sarok and one other species, the Grin, refused. The Sarok commander stood up and addressed the hall. The Sarok do not accept this treaty, he said. We do not accept human superiority. We will not trade with them or ally with them. We will wait. And when humanity shows weakness, we will strike. That is the Sarok way. Jake Henderson stood up again. Then the Sarok way is foolish. But that's your choice. Just remember what happened on Kepler 442b. Remember that 20 humans defeated 7,000 of your warriors. And understand that we have millions more like us. Billions of humans who are willing to fight if necessary. If you strike at us again, it will be the last mistake your empire makes. The Sarok commander hissed but said nothing more. He and his delegation left the hall. The Grin followed, also refusing to sign. Elder Morth addressed the remaining delegates. Then let it be recorded.